I always take in this view before starting any walk from this car park. Today I'm doing the Karaka Wonder, a 4-kilometer walk through the valleys of Tamata Park. The scenic focus is the epic limestone cliffs. This walk is named for a grove of old Karaka trees. We're still getting a lot of rain, and the green is impressive on these bright sunny days. I'll try to get in all the Tamata Park walks before summer. It's a windy day, but there seems to be some breaks. I'll shut up for a minute here and there and listen to the birds. Gibraltar, the most vaccinated place on Earth, is having a surge in COVID cases. Other countries with high rates of vaccination are having similar issues. Singapore is 94% vaccinated, and cases and deaths hit record highs at the end of October. Things have improved slightly since. 92% of Ireland is vaccinated, and cases and deaths have doubled since August. Austria has gone into full lockdown. I haven't heard anyone dispute these facts, but I have learned that if I mention them, I have to point out that I'm not an anti-vaxxer, I'm fully vaccinated, and in fact I want all the COVID precautions you want, and some of the ones you used to want, if you're a person who ever wanted any of them. Yes, hospitalizations, and in most places deaths, are way down overall in places with high rates of vaccination. But case numbers matter, another fact I've never heard disputed. It doesn't have to be like this, but I'm not holding my breath until it changes. Anyway, Gibraltar, the most vaccinated place on Earth, is saying, basically, get your booster shots and stay home for Christmas. New Zealand is saying, get vaccinated, travel widely, and attend large gatherings for Christmas. We could learn from their mistakes. Instead, we're going to repeat them, without the quintupling of hospital capacity they made happen in Gibraltar. About their preparations, Gibraltar says, we have established a 248-bed field hospital at Europa Point Sports Facility, which can surge further up to 300 beds. We have multiplied by over 5 times the number of available ICU beds and the number of ventilators. The population of Gibraltar is 33,677. New Zealand has 186 ICU beds for a country of more than 5 million people. To be fair, New Zealand is not relying entirely on COVID vaccines, in the sense that mask requirements will continue, and New Zealand has acquired, or at least placed orders, for 5 different COVID drugs. I'll put these up on the screen rather than try to pronounce all 5 back to back. One or more of these is not yet approved by MedSafe, but the Medicines Act allows doctors to use them anyway. I'd like details on the number of doses in the country, and information on who gets them and when. I am definitely happy to hear that they're thinking this way. One or more of these drugs is expected to help keep people out of hospitals. But New Zealand is undoubtedly relying very heavily on the vaccines. The traffic light system will go into effect very soon. This system uses red, orange, and green levels. The start of this system will coincide with the opening of Auckland. Under this system, the majority of restrictions are for the unvaccinated only. There was some kind of bike event for kids running out of the Saddle Car Park. It's nice to be able to show another aspect of Tamata Park. Restrictions to be dropped include any form of lockdown. Lockdown was key to New Zealand's elimination of COVID. Elimination of COVID is generally understood to have been New Zealand's only choice, considering the state of the health system, which has barely improved in the last 2 years. Add a functional health system to the list of things New Zealand will be without as it opens its doors to COVID. The Prime Minister says she's confident that the hospitals will be able to cope with COVID-19 pressures over the summer. She's lying. The hospitals are a mess and on the verge of disaster already. Of course, she knows this. Here are just a few headlines. You can find links below. Whangārei Hospital. Leaky roofs, dodgy lifts, waiting lists, and COVID-19's here. From that article. During heavy rain, the lights can pop out of the ceiling in Whangārei Hospital's intensive care unit, and buckets are needed in radiology. COVID-19. Nurses under enormous strain amid staffing shortage. Auckland situation dire. One more. The perfect storm looks like this. Waves of people arriving from Auckland over summer, seeding COVID-19 outbreaks in the remotest communities of Aotearoa, among some of the most vulnerable and least vaccinated populations, in places where health provision is scarce and hospitals a long way away. The Prime Minister says that all businesses, including cafes and restaurants, will open again next week. About that, she's probably not lying. This is a bike trail I won't be trying to ride. Mind you, I won't be riding any of them anytime soon, until the hospitals are greatly improved or COVID is gone. I wonder which will happen first. Aucklanders are whining about any suggestion that Auckland should still be in lockdown. No one goes so far as to suggest that we should all be in lockdown in some kind of solidarity. They've relaxed somewhat recently, as it's been announced that Auckland will begin to open up starting December 3rd. It wasn't always like this. As recently as September, the majority were thinking about the greater good. In regards to COVID, anyway. How times have changed. Now we hear talk about how the cost of lockdowns is borne more by the young than by the old. I still remember when it was Grandma we were doing it all for. Other New Zealanders have, in the recent past, thanked Aucklanders for their sacrifice. It seems some Aucklanders are in as big a hurry to be disliked again by other New Zealanders as they are to spread COVID all over the country. That last part is not an exaggeration. Read the Our New Zealand subreddit to see Aucklanders gloat every time a case is found in a new region. This is a good vantage point for this replanted area that I walked through in a couple of previous videos. Click the card above for a walk through this area almost 2 years ago when it still had trees. I think the small, isolated grove ahead is the Karaka Grove. These trees have special cultural and historical significance for the Maori. Kernels from the tree were eaten. Leaves were used as medicine. Karaka groves are considered sacred places. This grove is believed to be about 200 years old. Someone recently tested for COVID and then left to travel from Auckland to Hawke's Bay. I have to assume that was a routine test for people who travel between regions. Anyway, that test came back positive, and the person self-isolated. They visited just 2 locations in Hawke's Bay before getting the test results. But the health system proceeded as if they were in Auckland. So the 2 locations of interest were not reported to Hawke's Bay residents until 8 days later. Needless to say, anyone who was at either of those 2 places did not self-isolate until at least 8 days later. One person has since tested positive in Hawke's Bay Hospital. The Karaka Wonder Trail passes through one end of the Big Redwoods Grove. Click the card above for a walk through the full length of this grove. The earliest people vaccinated in New Zealand are due for booster shots just about now. As I understand it, boosters will begin at the end of this month. We can assume they're not going to prevent people who are unable to get the booster from getting a vaccine passport. So for some period of time, people without adequate protection will be carrying the passport. The vaccine passport system is now live. I guess they will start being scanned when the traffic light system goes into effect. The rest of the world is preparing for the Omicron variant. Fortunately, New Zealand's borders won't open until sometime early next year. Unfortunately, the managed isolation and quarantine system is also dysfunctional, which also hasn't really been addressed. Life expectancy in most of the world decreased during COVID, but New Zealand saw the world's greatest increase in that time, followed by Taiwan, South Korea, and Norway. I'll link that graphic below. My dad got better briefly, before going downhill fast, and dying from COVID last week. I've been in the best place in the world for surviving COVID for the last 2 years. I'm hoping that's not about to change as much as I expect. Talk to you soon.